Gen Zers are people that will commit to something.
Yes.
If they're given the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than themselves. But there are barriers that we have to help them overcome to commit. Welcome to Magnified Ministry Podcast, the podcast dedicated to inspiring, encouraging, and equipping parish leaders to build thriving missionary communities in today's rapidly changing world. This is the Magnified Ministry Podcast.
Everybody, welcome back to Magnified Ministry Podcast. Marco and I am just so excited to join you as we continue our conversation on Open Generation. Now, just recap. Open Generation are Gen Zs, let's say 25 to 15. Why are we talking about Gen Zs? Michael, why are we talking about Gen Zs?
I think it's because we want to be cool and remember what it was
Everybody's
like
talking about Gen Zs.
It's like AI. When are we going to talk about AI on this podcast? I mean, come on.
It's coming.
It's coming. No. I think the reason we're talking about Gen Zs is obviously it's natural to want to talk about the next generation, the young people. And always the question is, how are we going to reach the young people? It's like, well, this is why we have to understand them. And we've had a couple of them join us in the podcast, and we'll continue to bring them so that you can see them as people. But also, there are particular things that you can do, practices, strategies, ideas, approaches to create space to give your parish a chance, and a really good chance of engaging them in faith and nurturing them as disciples. That's why we're talking about Gen Zs. I think.
And so can you give us a snapshot, if you will, of few things we know from Barna and Pew Research around Gen Zs that are important for church leaders to know?
Yeah, I think some of them we've talked about, but it's always important to remember that Gen Zs are, on the positive side, much more open than prior generations. They're much more connected. I mean, this is a generation that grew up knowing...
In the digital age.
Exactly. Knowing a world fully digital, right? The iPhone was launched before them. They were even born. And so this is a generation that's hyper-connected, hyper-digital, all of this stuff, which also has some drawbacks, right? Most anxious, most depressed, most lonely. And obviously, we're not here to talk about the connection between all those things. But this is a generation that is doing a lot of things that our generation, millennials, didn't really do. And what I mean by that is they have a much louder voice, and they are much more willing to explore things outside of their comfort zone.
I think that's why we call them an open generation, right? You see this great openness that I believe, as I translate the research to my own, brain and try to make sense out of it, what I would say is I think Gen Zs are looking at the world and say, oh my gosh, it's not in a great shape. Between the wars,
what did you guys do?
That's right. Between all the stuff that is happening,
yeah.
I think they're looking at it and say, how did we get here? And they're intelligent. So they look back and they say, oh, you basically substituted God by a lot of things. Now, Thomas Aquinas, in a long time ago in the 13th century, talked about 4 substitutes of God: power, pleasure, money, and honor, which is kind of selfishness, right? And the problem is that if they are disconnected, if power, pleasure, money, honor are disconnected from God, they become gods in themselves. Right. And so you make your life about those 4. If they're connected to God, they're not idols. They're of service to God. So you use money, power, pleasure, honor in the way of glorifying God. So the great philanthropists of the world, right? The people who made a social difference. You look at people around the world. Martin Luther King, right? In our own country. You look at the saints in the Catholic Church, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Cabrini, based here in Chicago, Maximilian Kolbe, all those people who took the message of Jesus and did something incredible with it, because all those things, power, pleasure, money, and honor, were flowing from the heart of Jesus and Jesus' love. So they were used in a loving way. Right. And I think the Gen Zs look at all of it and they say, wow, you guys really disconnected your values from God. And we don't know who God is, by the way. We are not really introduced to personal God, but we are willing to explore.
Yeah. And you know what I go back to is when we were growing up, there was a path to acquire knowledge and information, right? If you wanted to know something about history or about any sort of situation, you had to go to a library.
Yeah.
And you had to look at encyclopedias. Right?
And when I was in school, people would take all the copies of the books we needed.
Yeah.
So you would not know what they know.
Well,
they were unkind, period.
You grew up in that.
Welcome to Poland.
Welcome to the post-Soviet upbringing in some ways, which is very, I think all of us have different upbringings. But you're talking about Wikipedia and all of these things and the internet. Any person today has access, unlimited access to the entire history of humankind on their phone.
Yeah.
Right? Think about that power that a young person has. There is nothing that you can say that they can't fact check you on, right? And not only can they fact check you, just because you say it, you're in a position of authority as a clergy, right? 50 years ago, 100 years ago, what you said would have been taken
It was the priest, the doctor, and the mayor.
Right. In that order?
Well, I don't know if that order, but that's really what it was, right?
Authority.
Because those were the three educated people in
Exactly.
every little town, at least in Poland.
Yeah.
So those three were really the people who kind of shaped the identity of the little towns.
They shaped the identity of the towns, but of truth, of goodness. And now that has been completely democratized.
Yeah.
And so just because you say something doesn't mean that someone's going to take it as face value. They're going to go and figure out and see what the internet says about that and what the world says about that. And so that's the world that we live in. And to bridge that to what we want to talk about today, which is this idea of Gen Zers are a generation that really commits. And I think, as they say, they go in, there's all these terms that they use. I'm not even going to try to pretend like I know.
I don't understand any of those terms.
I don't know. But
up arrow is the only one I remember.
Up what?
Up arrow.
Up arrow. Yeah. We'll have to ask them what it means. But
well, that means that I agree with it.
So you're agreeing with, okay, cool.
I'm agreeing with you. Up arrow, Marco.
Sounds good.
Don't ask me for any other.
Sounds good. But I think Gen Zers get a bad reputation.
I think
sometimes.
I'm digging it is another one that they use.
That's, I think, one of ours. It's like saying what's up or like it's cool. Anyway, this is not a cultural podcast. We cannot.
You really got me going.
We cannot be cool. Let's just
trying to impress our listeners.
Let's name it.
3 Gen Z terms.
Let's name it. But what we want to talk about today is Gen Zers are people that will commit to something.
Yes.
If they're given the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than themselves. But there are barriers that we have to help them overcome to commit.
Correct.
Right. And I think part of that is maybe you can share a little bit of what you've seen, as pastor of this community, that this generation is struggling with. Like, what are the things that are pulling on their time? And why do they get such a bad reputation for being flaky, for being inconsiderate, for being inconsistent, when in reality, we've seen the opposite in some cases?
Absolutely. And I think what you first have to notice, and we've learned it from campus ministries, as every year we call a number of campus ministries here at St. Clement, and we ask them, what are you seeing among your generation? Because guess what? Those people will come to us. So we want to be prepared. What's working, what's not working. So we are super grateful to a number of places that, we connect with. And something that I've been thinking about is connected to this digital generation idea, right? Is that you really don't matter in the digital world, right? Because the voices, there's just billions of voices on the top of each other. So you really are just nobody in the digital world. And I think...
You as an individual, you're saying.
And so I think Gen Zs are kind of wrestling with this question, am I seen? Am I noticed? And do people really want me for wanting me, or they are just going to get used by them for their own selfish reason? Getting more followers, getting, more people react to the stuff I post. And I think that really is a big question. And so there is this idea about them being flaky generation, meaning that what they do is they overcommit because they don't want to feel like they're behind, because they look at the phone and they see all those
what
opportunities.
Do they say? What do they say? FOMO?
Yeah, they have that's right. The fear of missing out on something, because they look at things and they say, oh my gosh, there's 20 things and all of them sound good. And if they don't sound good, my friends might be there and I don't want to stay home by myself. So they overcommit, off bet. And then what happens is, because they are isolated and they get too worried about not delivering, right, on their coursework in school, on their regular work if they're in a working already. And what's happening is that they would overcommit and they would underdeliver. They don't show up.
Yep.
What we've learned at St. Clement from Campus Ministries is when people don't show up, you got to send them an email and said, we noticed you were not there. We missed you. We actually were prepared to welcome you. Would you come again? And what we noticed is, since we started doing it, the number of people not showing up is percentage went from like 40 to like less than 20. And I think, again, what they would say is they have seen, they unlike in all the other places that they didn't show up, everybody ignored them. We said, hey, we actually have seen you not being here and we missed you. You actually matter to us. And that's God's truth. You actually do matter to us. We want you to experience community. We want you to serve. We want you to experience God's goodness. And so I think that what's important is this personal connection, right? They want to be seen and noticed for who they are. And they want to feel like they are an audience watching the play. They want to be part of the play. You got to invite them to be players in the fabric of your community.
It's like what Harry Kramer, who's a professor at Kellogg, and C.O. Baxter, a friend, he always used to say, do you want to be watching the movie or do you want to be in the movie? And I think this next generation wants to be in the movie.
Correct.
And at some point directing it. And I think that opportunity, right, is the question comes down to, what are we inviting them to commit to, right? Because the reason that you are following up one-on-one is not necessarily because you're saying, hey, you said you would take this shift and now you left us in a bad place and now we have to go find, it's not out of a place of disappointment, like anger or frustration with them. I think it's coming from a place of, we believe that there is nothing in your life that matters more than a relationship with Jesus Christ and his church. Yeah. And that's what you're inviting them to commit to. Right?
Well, I think you make us sound a little bit too saintly, Marco. There is a level of frustration, right? When you prepare something for 300 people and 150 show up.
There's a real talk.
You are frustrated and you're heartbroken, right? Because you say, well, what happened? Like, why this is not important enough? But then that's where the study and data comes in. Like, as a pastor, your heart is broken every day, right? Nicky Gamble, who started Alpha, always says Alpha is the greatest and the hardest thing to do. Why? Because people don't come back.
Yeah.
They don't show up back. And it breaks your heart. Like, could I say something differently? Did we do something wrong? And the same thing with this. Like, your heart as a pastor, as a church leader, gets broken every day. You work so hard on people. Yeah. You invite them into community. And then they stop showing up. And you're like, what did we do wrong? And you don't know. You never will know. You continue to pray for them. But I think what you are pointing out to is this desire to lead people into relationship with Jesus. But you got to recognize that they're coming from the culture where in most of their homes, or a lot of their homes, they actually were not introduced to personal faith in Jesus. They might know a lot of things about Jesus, but that doesn't mean they really know who Jesus is, or they tested and experienced his personal love for them, right? They don't have the conviction of the heart. So if you don't have the conviction of the heart, it's much easier to give up. So you, as a church leader, have to really develop this threshold flexibility of saying, guys, you have to read the culture. The culture is not really in a good place. So consequently, of course they will be flaky. Yeah. Of course they won't be showing up the way you would want them to show up. And of course they will be scared to do things on their own without support. So you have to build, as we spoke about last week, you have to build a support system for them, right. People who will accompany them so they don't feel like they have this pressure all on themselves.
And I think the other piece that I'm pulling out from what you're saying, and I'll say it, and you can, push back if you think it's off base, but you are not trying to get them to commit to the cult, I'm going to say the word cult, the cult of Father Peter or the cult of Saint Clement. I'm using cult very, very generally. You're inviting them to commit to a life with Jesus in this community of believers.
That's right.
And you happen to be the pastor in this particular moment, and your goal is to steward and shepherd and create space. And I think that's a really important thing to know, right?
It's a good reminder.
You're not trying to get them to be your followers.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to get them to be followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's where the commitment becomes almost rock solid.
That's right.
Because they're committed to him and doing whatever it takes to bring others to him, right? Because pastors will change. There's things that you may do that people like, that people don't like. The parish community will change. They'll move away, right? That's always something I think about. It's like, what's going to happen when we lose 30%?
For us, it's 30%
of people in the next one.
Every year, yeah.
The best thing that you can hope for is that you've rooted them a little bit more deeply than they were here.
In the relationship with Jesus.
In relationship with Jesus. Because
right.
if people fall in love with St. Clement, if people fall in love with Father Peter and Father Riley and the staff, then...
what good is that? They will have to move one day. We'll have to move one day, hopefully a long time from now.
Right.
That's a great reminder, Marco. And I think for you church leaders listening to it, let me just try to repackage it in a way that maybe will make even more sense to you. And again, using our business school hat, give you some numbers on it. So number one, as a pastor or a church leader, the first thing you got to do is you got to know your research, right? If you want to engage Gen Zs, you got to know how to speak to Gen Zs, number one. Second, two, is you have to have people that will accompany them on the journey. Third, you have to have a place to welcome them. Fourth, you have to have a way of cultivating their faith. And fifth, you have to invite them to partnership. Partnership is extremely important and very important for the growth of the church, but their personal growth. So as you said, Marco, what I find as a pastor of a church that sees 30 to 40% turnover every single year, we literally, hundreds of our young adults move to other parts of the city, other parts of the country and the world. And I always tell them every single year, I repeat the same thing over and over again, is my job is to make you a Catholic leaders. So I want you to serve. I want you to serve the poor. I want you to be liturgical ministers. I want you to be lectors. I want you to run alpha courses. I want you to run beta courses. Why? And the people say, well, I'm not prepared. Great. You will prepare as you will be doing it, and we will help you. There will be people around you who will be with you every step of the way, but you will learn by doing it. Why? Because in a year you might be in Atlanta, and my prayer and hope is that you will, in your local parish, find a church that enables you to use your leadership gifts, and you'll say, oh, I ran Alpha course for the last 2 years. Can I be part of Alpha? And we have those stories. We have stories from all across the country of people who moved away from St. Clement and they started running Alpha course. There was not even an Alpha course there.
Right.
Or
a young adult ministry or
existing groups
something.
Or started thinking and inviting the pastor to drive some engagement of young adults. So it is really working, but you have to think about it as an act of generosity. My job is to prepare a next group of incredibly formed and really generous Catholic leaders who will go around the country and help other parishes to grow and engage young people. And so it cannot be inward focused. It always have to be Catholic. We are not congregational church.
Right.
It always have to be for other churches.
That's right. I mean, and it's the model that Jesus followed, right? I mean, if you go back to scripture, Jesus was inviting the 12 and then, the 72 and then to a life of faith, to a new way of life. And I think that's what's resonating really well with the next generation is, faith, Christianity, the Roman Catholic Church. It's not something you do on Sunday. It's not a hobby. It's not meant to be a hobby. It's not meant to be one of the things you put on your resume. It's not one of the badges that you get, or places you check in on. It's a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really think about that, it's a way that's what I think is resonating with the new generation is we're giving them this opportunity for a different way of life, not just for the fullness of life on this earth, but after. And that's what I think is really excited about is they're saying, I've been taught to believe and live in this one way, but there's something better, and that's a life in Jesus. And I think that's what's resonating and what we're seeing so many people, not just here, but all over the world,
globally, yeah.
Just have this awakening and reassertion. So,
but to your point, they won't go deeper if a parish doesn't have a place for them to go deeper, right? They won't be leaders if you, as a church leader, don't have a clear expectation of saying, our goal for this fall is for 20 of you to engage in leadership around those ministries. And then I will lead you through prayer for the next 3 weeks, let's say, after communion, to discern. And after 3 weeks, I will make this altar call, or however you will do it. And I will say, I need now 20 people to say yes to Christ in this way of supporting the growth or continuation of our ministries. You have to be clear of the expectation as a leader. And you have to invite people to a space where someone will welcome them and accompany them. So it's not scary.
That's right. So much goodness, so many tips, so little time.
This was so fun.
But
we'll continue the conversation.
We're not done.
Gen Zs.
We're not
and
done.
We'll have some guests, some Gen Z. So we'll do a little bit more of unpacking how they see church, community, and the parish. So stay tuned for that.
We'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye now.